Welcome to the Springs in the Desert podcast. We're those friends that you can take with you wherever you are on the path of infertility.
Hello, welcome back to the Springs in the Desert podcast. This is Cassandra. I am here with our friend and one of our founders, Kimberly. How's it going?
Great. So happy to be back. It's been a while.
I know. It's good to see you. Kimberly is a wife. She's a mama to 4 through both private and foster care adoptions. And it's great to have you on today, Kimberly, because you're also the founder of our sister ministry, Springs of Love, which encourages, educates, and equips Catholics to discern and live out the call to foster and adopt while creating communities of support to help cultivate a culture of foster care and adoption in our parishes. And since it's November and it's National Adoption Month, we decided we would get into this topic. There's so much to say, and that's why we're so happy to have Emily Stimpson Chapman here with us. Emily, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
I know. We're so excited to have you on. Emily, if you don't know her, she is also wife and mama to 3 through adoption. She's a powerhouse Catholic author and speaker. She's written books, endowed studies, theology textbooks, and her latest book was just released. It's called The Supper of the Lamb, a children's book co-authored with Scott Hahn. So for those of you who do have littles in the home or nieces and nephews like myself, definitely check that out. There's so much more to say, but we're so happy to have you on, Emily.
I don't feel like a powerhouse, though. I'm not a powerhouse. I'm just tired.
Tired. I know. So often it feels that way.
Oh my goodness. I'm just tired and my room's a mess. So
keeping it real, folks. Anyway, so it is National Adoption Month, as I mentioned. And so here at Springs in the Desert, we do like to touch on adoption and foster care during this time, especially now that Springs of Love is turning 1 year old. Kimberly?
Yes.
1 year of Springs of Love. Anyway, we know that this is a complicated topic. There is a lot of people out there who have gotten the suggestion to just adopt. Have you heard about adoption and why don't you do this? And so we know that it's sensitive. We know that not every couple is called to adoption or is even capable of pursuing adoption, whether that's financially or otherwise. If we live in a fallen world, it's messy, right? But anyway, if you are maybe listening to this podcast and maybe thinking about it, maybe you're not sure, we just invite you to listen with an open heart. And we're just going to touch on those areas of discernment and all those new areas of relationship that open up when we start down this path of foster care and adoption, right? We just want to say, if this is on your heart, we're here with you. With that being said, Emily, why don't you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story so that they can know where you're coming from?
Sure. So I married later in life. I was 41 when I got married. And my husband and I have been best friends for years. And there was some frustration that he wasn't moving things along because I saw that biological clock getting closer and closer to midnight. Mm-hmm. So once we started dating seriously and were pretty much engaged, I started thinking very seriously about fertility. I'm very choleric, very type A. So I was like, all right, I've got to see the NAPRO doctors and get the hormone tests and go on the supplements and eat the right foods because I wanted to hit the ground running. We were not going to waste any time in trying to conceive. And I did that. We got married and no baby came. And I think within 3 months, I was like, okay, I'm going to go see the NAPRO doctor again and talk to him about exploratory surgery because time is a wasting. When you're older, every month feels like a year. You don't have 10 years to get pregnant. You don't have 15 years to get pregnant. You have 15 months or 2 years or 3 years. Mm-hmm. And so we did the exploratory surgery. The doctors were very confident that I should get pregnant. That did not happen. We went on hormone treatments. We did acupuncture. We saw holistic medicine doctors. I remember one day I was standing in my kitchen feeling like everything I was eating and taking, I should just be spontaneously getting pregnant. There should just be a baby like in my womb because of everything I'm doing to be fertile. But that did not happen. And during that time, we were very open to adoption. We had talked about adoption before we got married. That was something that we were open to, but it didn't feel like it would be possible. We were mired in this huge, awful, all-consuming home renovation that had gone as bad as in as many ways as a home renovation can go bad. Mm-hmm. I thought we would be we would be going bankrupt from that. And so it just didn't seem possible. Plus we were running into roadblocks with age. My husband was a little bit older than me. And it just felt like a lot of doors were shutting on us. And
right.
So that went on for probably a solid year and a half before the doors did open for adoption. And then we adopted our first son 2 years, almost the day after we got married. So.
Wow. Wow. Praise God. Yeah. And Kimberly, why don't you just fill just the brief version? Just tell us about your family a little bit too, in case we have anybody new here with us.
Yes. Yeah. So my husband and I married a little bit later. I was 36 when I got married and really hopeful that I was going to be able to get pregnant. I had been charting and doing all the things and we just never got pregnant. Just when I did the surgery and I did all the supplements and the HGC injections and all the things. And it was so discouraging for me. And I got to the place where I was like, it was all consuming. It was just a drain on my marriage and a drain on me. And I said, I had to quit. I had to quit all those things. And I said, if God wants me to get pregnant, like he can make it happen, right? I don't have to do all the things because there would be this like level of guilt if I didn't exactly do everything perfectly. Oh my gosh, I ate some gluten or whatever. And then I'd be like, that's the reason I didn't get pregnant. Or just ridiculous things. And it's okay, who is God? Who do I know God to be? Oh, you ate that roll. Sorry, now you're not going to have a baby. That's not God. Okay. So I clearly was like, okay, he is calling me in a different direction. And so it was really trying to get my husband on board because he was not quite so excited about adopting. He's, let's just keep trying. I'm like, I'm 40. I am tired of keep trying. I'm not trying anymore. That's the problem. I don't want to try anymore. So I said, let's just start tiptoeing in the direction of adopting. And he was very like, just not so on board. So I was able to convince him to just start taking some classes at the foster care agency to find out about fostering to adopt. And it was free. And it was baby steps, like super baby steps, because you just go and start taking these classes and learning more. And then we got our home study done and just, okay, we're just going to wait and see what happens. So we ended up getting a call after about 2 years for a baby boy to foster that we did get to adopt actually very quickly, which was surprising. And then we adopted twin girls who were just about to enter foster care. So then I suddenly had triplets. I had 3 babies that were 5 months apart. So it was very crazy and very similar to Emily. So all the babies like seemed to come like boom.
Yeah.
Once.
0 to 60.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, wait, okay. I told the convents, stop praying. So we had like multiple convents of nuns praying for us. We have all we can handle. And then when they were all 4 years old, we were able to foster and adopt one more baby boy. So we have 4 children.
Great. And just to give some context again, like I said, in case we have anybody new, my own personal story, I am not a mama to anyone except the puppy who's miraculously being very quiet downstairs. So let's hope that continues. But so I had a very surprising diagnosis of cancer when I was 29. Within 3 months, I was post-hysterectomy. And so during that time, when I was trying to grapple with the reality that was about to be mine, I was really getting into the internet and Reddit on adoption stuff. Adoption was not something I ever thought would really be on my radar. It was super eye-opening. Not sure if I recommend it if you're in a sensitive place and thinking about adoption. But anyway, so my husband and I are maybe what currently I just feel like I would like to have had adopted. But the process just seems so daunting. So I'm hoping to demystify some of that because I think I'm the target audience for this conversation that we're about to have. That being said, for those in a season of infertility, what do you guys think might be some of the biggest hesitancies? What were some of your biggest hesitancies about adoption? And what advice do you have for someone struggling with the idea of adoption amidst infertility? Any ideas?
I was really lucky to have spent a number of years surrounded by adults who were adopted and friends who had adopted. One of my good friends is a birth mother. So I'd seen adoption in many forms and I knew it could be beautiful and I was very open to it. But for me, the part of it was I wanted to try to get pregnant first. It was like, maybe we'll adopt someday, but right now I want a baby who I've given birth to.
Right.
But also the money. Like I would look at the costs and I'm like, how? We don't have that kind of money. Like who has that kind of money laying around that they can just spend $50,000 for a child? And in time, when no baby was coming, it was like, all right, what do I want? To be a mom or do I want to be pregnant? And I'm like, okay, I want to be a mom. So let's not worry about the pregnancy. Let's move forward to the adoption so I can enjoy my children before I'm geriatric. And then with the money, God just showed me how he provided. Like God has all the money in the world. And if God's plan for you is to adopt, the money comes. Now, that might take some humility on your part. God's not just, here's your check for $50,000 with no effort on your part. You might have to find a way to organize a fundraiser or get creative with how you refinance things or look into, there's all sorts of, for me, I had to humble myself and be like, okay, we're going to let the people who are asking do a fundraiser for us. And that's what we did for our first son. And we took out a home equity loan. So it was a combination. And then the other, I was like, I'm going to get creative. I'm a writer. I'm going to write something that people will get if they give a donation. Mm-hmm. And that's how we were able to adopt our other two. But I've seen friends who have no platform. They have no money. They're like, husbands don't have jobs practically. Mm-hmm. And yet somehow the money comes. And I think one of the things that we often forget, we talk about people who are having lots of babies, how they have to trust God with their fertility and not use contraception. But God calls all of us to trust him with our fertility, not just people who have no problem conceiving. And when you are infertile, like you're trusting him with your infertility, you're trusting him with his plan, you're trusting that he's going to provide the way for you if that's what he wants. And it's in that act of trust that healing happens and that I think miracles happen.
Yeah, that's so good. Kimberly, what do you think?
Yeah, I think people can get really stuck and just stuck in discernment. And sometimes you just need to start stepping out in faith a little bit and seeing kind of what doors open. So that was our position, is that my husband was, let's just keep trying to get pregnant. And it just felt like this is going to take a long time. And I knew adoption, the process of adoption would take some time. So I wanted to just go ahead and get started with it and just let God open the doors he wanted. Because I had no idea what was going to happen. We said we would be open to fostering all ages in a giant sibling group. I was like, I'll take a big sibling group. And my social worker was like, I'm only going to approve you for 2. And I was like, 2. And it was so funny, but she was like, you have never parented. I'm not giving you a giant sibling group. It's going to be a train wreck, because these kids, obviously you get a sibling group, they've had trauma and there's beautiful training now. Actually, we're getting ready on November 10th to do a parenting kids from hard places, free parenting workshop on Springs of Love. That it's like really important that you start doing your education to see if, am I going to have to learn some new strategies and things like that? But I would just say start just taking a little step. So that's one of the things that we're suggesting for this month, for National Adoption Month, is just starting with baby steps and just take one step. Prayer, talking to your spouse about it. Always start with prayer. That's foundational. But then start talking to your spouse about it. Call a local foster care agency and just find out what the process is like. Just do some little step to just start moving in that direction and follow the peace, right? See how God shows you where he wants you next.
That's such good advice, because just speaking for myself, it just seems like my husband and I right now, there's no discerning going on really, because it always seems like there's no time, because your life gets filled with things, right? But even if there was time, it just seems like adoption and like foster care and this whole monster process, when what you're saying is so practical, it's just pick up the phone or just go on your state's website and just see what the first step would be. God doesn't ask us to start from the end. You just put out little feelers and see, if you're feeling called anywhere. But it's just so good that you bring up the spouse too. And I'm glad, Kimberly, that you were honest. There was a difference too with your husband and your enthusiasm maybe about doing this. And obviously that the unity of the marriage always has to come first. What conversations do you think would be good for a couple to have if they're just feeling this out, if maybe one spouse is more on board than the other? What would you recommend couples talk about? And if you had any books too you wanted to recommend? Emily, let's start with you.
I was really fortunate. My husband was very much on board with adoption from the start. So before we got married, we talked about what it meant to be open to life. And we had a very expansive view of openness to life. So it wasn't just not using contraception and receiving whatever children God gave us. It was welcoming people into our home. We see generosity and hospitality as part of openness to life. It's giving money, attending to people, talking to the homeless guy on the street, and making sure he has a place to eat, is fed, is openness to life. Giving to adoption fundraisers is part of being open to life. So because we had that really expansive view of openness to life going in and felt like God in particular was calling us had given us the charisma of hospitality and generosity. Adoption was a really natural extension of that for us. My husband, he says he's really good at saying yes to good things. And he is. He's good at saying yes to good things. But I think that oftentimes, because I hear from so many women who they're very interested, it's like Kimberly's situation. They would love to adopt, but their husband is completely closed to it. And I think that's where you have to start talking about, because there's a difference between not feeling called to adopt and being scared to adopt or having prejudices against adoption or fears surrounding it. And so to really start talking through, okay, why don't you want to adopt? What are you afraid of? What do you think adoption is going to look like? And then to also talk to other couples who've adopted. Like the night we got the call about our oldest son, Toby, we'd gone over to a friend's house who had adopted. They'd adopted 2 young boys. And we were just there to talk with them about their experience of adoption. And for my husband, I think one of the reasons he had an easy time saying yes is because he was talking to other adoptive fathers. He saw how beautiful the relationships were. He saw that it wasn't a lesser form of loving a child. It wasn't raising someone else's kid. It's your own kid. And seeing that love between the fathers and the children, talking to them, I think just made it very easy. So I would encourage you to talk through the fears if your husband or you is struggling. Like, what are you afraid of versus what do you think God's calling you to do? And then reach out to others. Listen to these podcasts. Listen to some of the resources that Springs of Love have put together. You can listen to my husband, who's much wiser than me, talking in one of the videos that Kimberly's produced. Reach out to my husband if you want to. If you need to talk to a man, my husband will talk to people about adoption. I think that God, when we're afraid, God is not in that kind of fear. When we're afraid of loving another person or welcoming another person, that's not God. I'm not saying God is calling me to something else, not this, but I think adoption is awesome. That's a good sign that God is calling you to something besides adoption. But when your reasons for not adopting are fear-based, that is not the Lord, and he's got to get invited into that.
Yeah. Kimberly, what do you think? And did Greg have any specific hesitancies that he was bringing up to you that you then had to work through?
Hey friends, it is your podcast host, Jillian. Just popping into this episode to ask you to consider supporting our podcast with a financial gift. This episode is brought to you by staff, volunteers who reviewed the content, and a professional editor. We would be so grateful for your financial support to keep this podcast sounding great and reaching more listeners who need a friend on the path of infertility. Thank you for your support.
First of all, the Springs, thanks so much, Emily, for bringing that up, because the Springs of Love video series, the whole reason we created this is to help people understand a little bit more about adoption and fostering. And so we have these beautiful stories. They're on our website, springsoflove.org. They're also on Formed and EWTN On Demand. And we actually are getting ready to put out 2 more videos, and they're absolutely beautiful. Emily's story is on there. My story is on there. We've got a story of somebody who grew up in foster care and families who foster to adopt, families who foster just to foster, a story of miscarriage and then adoption and then giving birth, and just lots of beautiful reunification of fostering with their birth father and how that can be a really beautiful thing. So I would say go to our website, because we also have a Be Not Afraid foster and adoption discernment retreat that's just free online. And it's a bunch of different people who have fostered and adopted, kind of sharing some wisdom, their experiences. But yeah, my husband will say that for him, there was a real hesitancy because he wanted to have a son that was like him. He wanted a son who was athletic like him and who was interested in the same things as he was. And it's funny because I don't know, that's not the way I think. I love like all the unique diversity of like children. And he was like, I want somebody like me. And it's so funny because he said the moment that they put Anthony into his arms, he was just like, oh yes, this is my son. This is my son. And what's so funny and ironic is Anthony is totally like him. In so many ways not. Like Anthony's very artistic and he's got this side that makes Greg very nervous because he is not. He's, oh my gosh, my son's an artist. And he's worried about that. I don't know. But, I'm like, what if Michelangelo's parents said that? But he's also like very athletic, which is funny. They love sports together. But now I think Greg my husband can see that even if Anthony was not athletic, like he would love him for him. Like you accept the child, right? You receive the person who comes to you. And he said, we have identical twin girls who could not be more opposite. So even if they have the same genetics, they can be totally different. And so that was just one of his things. He said he didn't grow up with anybody who had been adopted. He didn't really know much about adoption. So it was very uncomfortable and foreign to him. But now, he says, and I say, and actually Emily's husband says this in the video, I don't think of my children as adopted children. I think of my children as my children, like they're my kids. Like I'm not like constantly thinking, oh, this is because they're adopted. That does not come into my head or my husband's.
Yeah.
I think if I could add one thing there, I think adoption is such a great chance to discern unhealthy attitudes that you would bring to parenting, whether you adopted or gave birth. So many people go into parenting, they're like, I don't want to adopt because I want my kids to be like me. And I'm like, do you know other people? Have you actually met humans in real life who are nothing like their parents? Because that's most people. Or I'm scared. What if my kid struggles with identity issues or has mental illness or struggles with addiction? Or what are all these things I can't control? What if they hate me? And I'm like, again, have you met other people? Like, you know people. I mean, humans are unpredictable and we all are broken in some way. And life, like you just can't control other people. You can't control your children. And that's one of the most foundational parenting lessons you have to learn in order to be a healthy parent. And so adoption is such a gift, even in the discernment process, even if you end up not adopting and a baby comes along, to have thought through, oh gosh, I'm really controlling. I'm really fearful. I have very unrealistic expectations of parenthood, and that's going to apply whether I adopt or however God sends a child to us. And again, this is where talking through those fears and just, I'm sure if you pointed out to Greg, like, Greg, how many people do we know who are anything like their parents? Could you be realistic here? What are you going to do if we give birth to a child and he's not? Like speaking those fears really helps to bring light and grace into them. Just it illuminates them. Satan loves it when we keep things in the dark. He loves fears to stay inside of us. And to speak them is the first step always to letting God into them.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's good. That's great advice because I'm just thinking about this now and I feel like I know, but I have fear, right? Of if it ever happens, especially about the relationship with the birth parents, but I have a lot of fears too about the process. And it's what is that really about? And yeah, it's just, anyway, I do want to talk about the process because like I said, I feel like there's a lot of fear in me and in other people about the process because I feel like we hear and everyone, and especially in the Instagram, there's a lot of opinions everywhere and people venting and stuff. And then on Reddit, which again, I don't recommend, but on like how horrible the process is. And to someone like me, I would like to do this, but I would actually prefer just not to go through it myself and just skip to the end. And it just like, why do people say it's so horrible? What was the process like for you? Can you just like demystify a little bit about that? Kimberly, why don't you start? Because you can also address the public side.
I think that is so funny you say that because that reminds me of childbirth, right? It's so many of my friends have horrific childbirth stories, horrific. Like my best friend, I mean, she's almost died. The babies have almost died multiple times. They've gotten stuck inside of her, horrible stories. And I'm just like, how do you do it again? Because it's so out of your control, right? Out of your control. And so when you're saying this, I just want to get to the end. But my mother always said, you forget like how hard it was when you're holding that baby. And that's like how I feel about the adoption process. Like I would walk through fire for my kids. And I actually feel like I did walk through fire. I did this crazy high ropes course recently at this retreat. And I don't know why I went to the highest rope and I started doing, and it was terrifying. Like I think of myself as pretty brave. I've jumped out of airplanes.
Kimberly, you would though. You would do that though.
I'm brave. I went backpacking all over Europe by myself when I was like 19 years old. Like I'm tough. I'm brave. And I got up there on the high ropes course as this 50-year-old woman. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have like health issues now. And I'm like on these high ropes and I was terrified. And literally the thing that got me across is I was like, I would do this for my children. I would do this for my children. That's what I was saying. I would do this for my children. as I was going across. And so I think about the process, and yeah, it's a pain, and yeah, it's a little bit intrusive, but it wasn't that. I would totally do that for my kids. I look now at my children and I just think, absolutely, I would do this for you. Yeah. So I got to be really good friends with like our social worker who was coming over to our house and asking the intrusive questions. And at one point, my husband's like, why do we have to answer this? Why do we have to go through this process? This is ridiculous. There are people getting pregnant all the time and they don't have to go through this. And why should I have to do this? And she's like, there are people who lock children in cages. And that was like a splat. Wow. There are people who do abuse children. And so there is, and it is a big deal, right? It's a really big deal to be adopting a child. This isn't something that it should be taken lightly. And we went through the foster care system where there are children who have been through a lot of trauma and abuse and such. So anyway, but I would say it was totally worth it. And I would absolutely go through it again without question.
Emily, what about you?
Yeah, we could do a whole episode on the process.
Yeah.
3 adoptions, every one of them was different. I definitely agree with Kimberly in the fact that people will say, oh, don't you feel like you missed out on being pregnant and giving birth? And I'm like, nope, I had enough difficulty with those adoptions. Like I had my share of Eve's labor pains. Like we are good on that. But that's really what it is. Like it's a willingness to suffer for another. And whether you're going to become pregnant, whether you're going to be married, whether you're going to love anyone in your life, you are going to suffer by letting somebody else in your life. You're going to hurt. You're going to be anxious. You're going to worry. Unless you want to lock yourself in a room and, I don't know, watch whatever people are watching. So I'm like watching a bunch of home renovation shows. Like you're putting yourself out there and it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
The paperwork is tedious. Like it felt like a part-time job, but it's not all at once. You're doing it. And I didn't mind the questions, even though they felt very specific at times, because I'm like, you know what? I don't have a right to a baby. Like I don't have a right to any child. They have to make sure that I'm safe. They have to make sure that I'm going to be loving. And the parent who chooses me needs to feel like she's entrusting her child to someone who is safe and loving. So approaching it from a sense of like, gift, like this child will be a gift and not a right, made that easier. But yeah, my first son, we had a very wild, like there was no wait. We hadn't even started the process when we were offered the chance to adopt him. Like we were talking to people and thinking about things. When you're dealing with broken people, because no one is placing a child for adoption who is not struggling or who's in a great place. Don't say, oh, my life, everything is together. Life is good. I'm going to just give up my baby. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. You're dealing with people who are wounded and struggling in some way and very different ways. There's no 2 birth parents who are exactly the same. You're dealing with women who are doing the hardest thing a woman can do, which is entrust their child to somebody else. And yeah, it's hard. And we had a very difficult first adoption with Toby. With Beckett, it was the opposite. The hard part was the waiting to be chosen, feeling rejected when you weren't chosen. And then he's what they call a stork drop. So we hadn't shown our profile to a mom or anything. We just got a call and said, hey, there's a baby who was born 2 hours ago. Do you want to be his parents? And if so, how fast can you get here? And we're like, on the road 2 hours later. And it was a whole different process because his birth mom had signed before we even got there. And so as soon as we pretty much knew about Beckett, he was ours. There was no anxiety provoking difficulties. We were in the NICU with Beckett for almost a month. And then we got home and 6 days later got a call that our first son's birth parents were expecting again. And would we like to adopt that baby in 7 months when that baby was born? And we were expecting it to be a very difficult pregnancy again, like with our first, but it wasn't. It was actually very quiet. And I think that's because I had a lot more people praying on the internet for us. But then her actual birth was very difficult. And it was an emergency C-section where her birth mom had been leaking amniotic for 24 hours. And we're racing across the country with an 8-month-old and a 2-year-old. And we think Ellie's going to be dead or have severe disabilities. And she's getting life flighted down a mountain. So it's a lot of drama. But not every adoption story is like that. Like every adoption story, when you've heard one, you've heard one.
Yeah.
But that's the same with birth stories. When you've heard one birth story, you've heard one birth story. When you've heard one pregnancy story, you've heard one pregnancy story. But again, Satan just loves to make us afraid of things. He wants us to be afraid of pregnancy. He wants us to be afraid of adoption. He wants us to be afraid of loving people. He doesn't want us to give ourselves and open ourselves up. Because when we open ourselves up and take on the hurt that comes with love, we are hanging with Christ on the cross. And Satan does not want us hanging with Christ on the cross. He wants us isolated from Christ. He wants us closed to grace. And so adoption is just another way of saying yes to Jesus. And it's walking the path he's called you on. Infertility is always an invitation. It's an invitation to grow closer to Christ. And it's an invitation to walk the path Christ has for you. And maybe that's not adoption. Maybe it is. You have to discern that with Christ. But I think seeing infertility as an invitation always to love helps to make the fear dissipate. And love means you're going to suffer. There's no way around it. Can't sugarcoat it. But I would do it like really 80 million times over and twice more on Sunday for my babies. Like they were worth every ounce of the crazy. And there's a lot of crazy. So
yeah. So for everybody out there who's listening, who's maybe scared of the process like myself, because we're going to take this in hand, right? Or who maybe you're in the process right now and struggling, just to keep things in perspective and to just think about mothering is painful. Like becoming a parent is painful. And what you're doing in the process is an act of parenting. And if things don't work out, then it wasn't for nothing either. God is always purifying us through the trials he sends us. It just reminds me too, when I was in chemo, actually, I was talking to a social worker who came to visit me, and I was just explaining about like the grief processing that I was doing of never being able to have children, like definitive post-hysterectomy, never. And just explaining that if we ever adopted, that I wouldn't want to put all that on them, that it's important to grieve the infertility itself. And he said something about that, which just means that you're good parents, like that, or something like that, that's an act of parenting. And it's just really beautiful. Yeah, nothing ever goes to waste with God. But just to wrap up this conversation, I just wanted to bring it back, as we love to just keep marriage at the center of our perspective. So for those couples who are out there, maybe they're having a hard time in the waiting. As we know in this community, we're always waiting. Any tips on keeping marriages strong going through all this?
I'm with Kimberly on taking breaks. Like you have to take breaks. You have to stop charting. You have to have uncharted sex. Like you need to go months maybe without having uncharted sex, because there's nothing that can screw up your sex life, like charting and obsessing about fertility. You need to travel together. You need to look for ways that you can love other people in your marriage right now. Again, it goes back to that invitation of God's. Maybe he's not calling you to adoption now or ever, but he's always calling you to be open to life and generous and love other people. And that doesn't start after you decide, okay, well, we're never going to get pregnant. Now we can start being generous. Like it starts now. And the more generous you are now, and the more you love others now, the more God's going to make his plan clear for you, whatever that is. So don't wait to be generous and open to life, whatever that means as you discern it. That would be what I would say.
Great. Kimberly, any tips? Marriage?
I love that. I just wanted to listen to Emily. She's so many beautiful insights. But yeah, just to know and rest in the fact that God has a plan of fruitfulness for your life, and that he's not abandoning you, and he's not trying to make it really hard and difficult for you to figure out this plan. It's opening up, like Emily said, just like hospitality. Like it's beautiful. Just trying to find ways that you are fruitful right now in your marriage, right now, and to just step out a little bit of your comfort zone. I'm always about, let's just think of that high ropes thing. Like that was really scary. So just try to do something maybe that's a little bit scary. Just say, you know what, we're just going to look into this, and ask your husband to be adventurous with you, and just to trying to look for the ways that God might be calling you, and to be open-minded, to not just close off, I don't want to do that, but just to try to really trust that God is with you in this, and just enjoy each other, just have fun together, and stay connected, stay close to each other by friendship and fun.
Yeah. Much. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. I think when you're struggling with infertility, the world and our own natures tell us to do one of two things. Either you double down and you're like, I'm taking all the pills. We are doing all the charts. Get the surgeries in. Fine. I'll adopt if I have to. Like, I must have a baby. And you hold it really tight. Or you just shut down and say, okay, fine. There's no baby. I'm just going to live my life as I was living it. Like I'm just going on, and we're not going to work through this. And both of those ways of coping it shut God out. And Because a lot of people think healing from infertility, they'll talk about don't adopt until you've healed. That doesn't mean you're never going to be sad that you didn't get pregnant. You're never going to be sad that there aren't more babies. I'm sad right now that there's not a fourth baby. I would like another one. What it means is that you've let God into the infertility. You've said, okay, Lord, I'm responding to your invitation. And for both of you, husband and wife, to let God in and let him start working and showing you the path he's calling you to, that's when the healing starts. And so I think together, to not just act like there's no problem or to act like you have to control it to death, you've got to stop doing that and go to God and start trusting him. And when you do that, in time, he shows you what's next. Not everything that's coming ahead, but like the next step. He will give you the grace to do the next step.
Yeah. One step at a time. Not really a better message to end on than to trust in God, to trust in Jesus and all the pain and waiting and rejection, and that he is there in all of it. And so much about infertility and medicine and charting and dieting and paperwork and social workers is unromantic. But I like what Kimberly said too, is to be adventurous together. And sometimes in some seasons of life, being adventurous together is going to look different than it does in others. But
paperwork, nothing more adventurous than that.
But that's why we're in marriage for life. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation, and just that these words just are encouraging to you and maybe help demystify it a little bit like it did for me. And anyway, no matter where you are in the path of infertility and adoption, we just want you to know that God loves you. And so do we. God bless you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this Springs in the Desert podcast episode. We would be so grateful if you took a minute to rate and review us so that we can reach more listeners. Don't forget to check out our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram, and go to our website, springsinthedesert.org, where you can sign up for our newsletter and community prayer list, read our blog, and register for virtual and in-person events. Most importantly, remember that God loves you so much, and so do we.